The Shooting Range. In this episode, pages of history, Kelly Johnson's amazing lightning. Triathlon, this time with twin-engine aircraft including the Lightning, and metal beasts, a loaded British jet. The Hawker Hunter F6 is a British subsonic jet fighter that sits at BR 9.7. It has access to both powerful cannons and highly agile air-to-air missiles, making it a deadly combatant at close range, while an abundance of payload options means that this fighter can be effective in almost any combat situation. Its swept-backed wings are two spar structures. The cockpit is reinforced by 64mm of armored glass and has 12mm of armor in the back. Behind it, as well as in the wings, are self-sealing fuel tanks. The heart of this jet is a Rolls-Royce turbojet engine, and there are four 30mm cannons right under the pilot's seat. We can't say that this aircraft performs exceedingly well. Its max speed in level flight is 1148 kph, its climb rate is 70 meters per second, and this British jet has a turn rate of 25 seconds. Not the best performance at the 6th rank, to be honest. You can make use of combat flaps and landing flaps. There is also an air brake. But the real strength of the Hunter comes in the form of its armaments. The fighter is equipped with deadly 30mm Aiden cannons, allowing you to tear through other aircraft, and also giving a lot of pain to ground vehicles. You get 4 belts to play with, a stock one and 3 researchable ones, a ground targets belt, an air targets belt, and a stealth belt. All of those, excluding the only air targets one, have AP rounds that can penetrate up to 47mm of armor, meaning that you can even be a threat to MBTs. When it comes to payload options, there are rockets, 500-pound and 100-pound bombs, as well as majestic SRAAM air-to-air missiles. We spoke about them at length during previous episodes of The Shooting Range. These missiles are the main feature of this fighter. They can use thrust vectoring, making them extremely agile. They're also capable of insane target tracking. Taking into account that they reach the speeds of up to 1,000 meters per second, they will leave very limited room for escape for most of your enemies. The Hunter can carry up to 4 of those to boot, more than many other fighters. There is a catch though. These missiles have much shorter ranges than other missiles. You can lock onto a target that's up to 4 kilometers away, fire them off at 1.5 kilometers. But given the fact that the enemy is extremely likely to evade, try to get as close to your target as possible before releasing your wrath. Good bombs and unguided rockets capable of piercing up to 300mm of armor will make short work of targets on the ground. When playing mixed battles, though, keep in mind that your fighter is ill-equipped to deal with AA missile systems, which means that despite having excellent 30mm guns, hunting ground targets is not your forte. The most obvious way to fly this aircraft is to use it as a BMZ fighter. Climb right at the start of the match, then pick a suitable target. Your speed and guns allow you to deal with anyone in the blink of an eye when it comes up close. But if something goes awry, finish the deed with missiles. Also remember, the Hunter F6 wasn't cut out to be a dog fighter. A lot of your peers at rank 6 are considerably more agile. It's more trouble than it's worth. A much better strategy is to disengage immediately after your strike and then start to look for your next prey. A heavily armed fighter capable of reaching speeds of more than 580 kph with a record-breaking climb rate, also that can serve as a high-altitude interceptor, a long-range bomber escort, a high-speed reconnaissance aircraft, a dive bomber, a torpedo bomber, and an attack aircraft. With requirements for a new US Army plane that high, it's no surprise that a lot of people thought that someone among top-ranking officials finally lost their minds. At the same time, when Kelly Johnson said that he can design such a plane, top hats at Lockheed first thought that their engineer had lost his marbles as well. Johnson had quite a reputation after his success with the Electra, though, so the management decided to let him try. Even according to the most conservative estimates, this aircraft had to push the limits in almost every field. Planes like these require a lot of work and are mostly unmodifiable afterwards. That's why Johnson and his team went into a direction that shook the whole industry. At the first glance, it was just a twin-engine, twin-boom fighter. There were some aircraft like that even during World War I. But once you had a closer look, there were a lot of surprises to be found. For starters, it was a single-seater, which meant that there was no gunner. A pilot had to rely on his own guns. Then there were two Allison V1710 engines, each with a turbo supercharger, and a light single-spar high-aspect wing. Those things alone meant that this fighter could operate at very high altitudes. But that was hardly all. Turbo superchargers were positioned really close to the engines, which wasn't a very common thing to do. After all, there was a possibility that exhaust gases from the engines would simply melt the superchargers. That didn't happen though, simply because the aircraft made use of an ethylene glycol cooling system that was cooling engine exhausts as well. After that, glycol traveled further, cooling turbochargers, and then finding itself in 4 huge liquid coolers, 2 on every boom. Well, why not? It's not a single-engine fighter after all, and there was a lot of room to play with. Furthermore, the Lightning got Fowler flaps in all their glory. Johnson and I perfected the technology when working on the Electra by making use of the extra sturdy flap guide rails and the most powerful and compact hydraulic systems available. He made a type of Fowler flaps perfect for such a speedy fighter. But why stop there? Johnson went all in, employing powerful hydraulics on ailerons, rudders, and elevators as well. If you've ever suddenly lost power steering in your vehicle, you'd immediately understand how important that was. Just think about that. It's much, much harder to steer an aircraft, especially at high speeds. Now that all the hydraulics allowed Lightning pilots to control their fighter aircraft with the softest of touches, or much easier anyway. The only thing missing was a Coke can holder in the cockpit. And they put it in as well, yeah. Not counting a lot of other things, a canopy providing excellent all-round vision, a tricycle landing gear. The P-38 was the first fighter to get one. Then there was a matter of scrupulously calculated aerodynamic flow, and only smooth, flush-riveted skin panels. Also, a lot of firepower. Rockets, bombs, torpedoes, machine guns, and cannons. The Lightning could carry any of them. Even though there were some problems during the testing phase, the new aircraft blew people's minds away when a pre-production Lightning beat the record for the fastest transcontinental flight from San Francisco to New York. Even with 2 refueling stops, the military went mad about the new design and demanded that it had to be put into service. It was still in the testing phase when Lockheed secured the first order for their new fighter. At that point in time, no one knew that the Lightning would be the only fighter to be produced all the way throughout World War II, and that no other design by any other nation would come even close. At the same time, Kelly Johnson wasn't the fella to just move to his next project. He was already wanting the Lightning to undergo heavy modernization. Did we mention that this fighter had excellent modernization capacity? Well, that's a story for another time. Do you feel that itch? Yep, the itch to see the Lightning in action? We got you. We will make it complete with other twin-engine aircraft. The British Beaufighter Mark 21, the German Bf-110C7, the Japanese Kai-45A, and the French VB-10C1. But wait, isn't this an automatic disqualification for the French aircraft? Well, it does have two engines. The second is just mounted behind the cockpit, and there are two propellers as well. So that's a proper twin-engine fighter if there is one. Show them what you're capable of, Mr. the VB-10C1. The first test is simple. Our twin-engine beauties all climb to 3,000 meters. Everyone ready? Steady? Go. The aircraft are gaining speed. They take off and start to climb with their optimal climb angles, 1,000 meters. The Beaufighter and the Bf-110 are starting to lag behind. 2,000 meters. The Kai-45 is firmly in the lead. 3,000 meters, and the Japanese crew secure their first win. Then come the American and the French aircraft. The other two are still way behind. The second test is a bit trickier. Let's see which aircraft can sustain the highest speed in a dive, without any parts breaking off naturally. Here they come. Everyone is diving. We're past the 600 kph mark, 700 kph, and the British aircraft is out. At 730 kph we lose the Japanese aircraft and then the German one. The Lightning hangs on a bit longer, but fails as well. The winner is the French bird, almost 800 kph. Now, let's see who'll be able to pull off the tightest horizontal turn while flying right above the ground. Look at all of them turning. The Bf-110 and the P-38 finish first. They completed the turn in 21 seconds. The French and the Japanese crew made it on the 23rd second mark, and the British Beaufighter is the last. Okay, now it's time for the last test. Yeah, it basically makes the whole thing a quadrathlon. But how can we not test their firepower? The targets are already all familiar to you. The GAZ AAA-D-SH-K, the PT-76, and the PZ-4F2. All the pilots have to do is to destroy all targets as swiftly as possible. German and British crews opt for some interesting payload options. The Bf-110 carries a 1,000-kilogram bomb, and the Beaufighter comes with 8 RP-3 rockets. It's no surprise, then, that they are the first to finish. The next ones to complete the test are the Lightning, which takes care of all the targets with its 4 Browning machine guns, and the French aircraft making excellent use of its 4 20mm Hispano cannons. The Japanese crew doesn't perform as well. They only manage to deal with 2 targets and set the last one on fire. Let's see who's the winner. The French VB-10C1 takes home a well-earned bronze medal. Thanks to its good climb rate and a lot of firepower, this bird is well suited to hunt enemy bombers. The silver medal goes to the American P-38. It has no rivals in air battles, but doesn't pack enough punch for mixed battles. The ultimate champion of this competition is the German Bf-110C7. Thanks to its maneuverability, it is very effective in air battles, while its array of payload options makes it a very good pick for mixed battles as well. Yeah, it's not a shiny record breaker like the Lightning out there, but it's well balanced for use in all sorts of combat scenarios. Hooray to the champion! The first message comes from a player called Ayanja Saltanutsa. Can someone explain what difference about self-propelled guns? I don't know what propelled means there. Hi. Well, it's a bit confusing when you compare SPGs to conventional tanks. Tanks are also propelling themselves, aren't they? The thing is, SPGs are defined by what makes them different from artillery guns, and not tanks. Artillery usually can't move on its own. They need a towing vehicle of some sort to move it from place to place, while a self-propelled gun is the same gun, but on a mobile chassis, meaning that it's capable of independent movement. The next question was sent in by a user called Dank Memes for Kids. How much explosive do you need to kill a tank by shooting the ground beneath him? Hi. That depends on both the amount of the explosive filler we're working with and the defenses of every particular target. Sometimes, light tanks or SBAA vehicles can be taken out even when using a cavity AP projectile this way. A Sherman armed with a 105mm howitzer is fully capable of eliminating any targets at its BR by shooting the ground beneath them. Its HE rounds have more than 2 kilos of explosive matter in them. But the best tool for this kind of elimination are probably big 120mm and 122mm HE rounds. Friedwald de Lebendiger has a suggestion for us.
Pages of history, amphibian vehicles?
Good day. It's a good idea. Why not? We'll think about it. A user called Rochambeau asks, There's a possibility to turn your stabilizer off in the game? Why would anyone do that? Well, that's just the same when choosing between a manual or an automatic gearbox. Most drivers are fully content with automatic transmission, but professional drivers are capable of making their vehicle do a bit more by being 100% hands-on. With a stabilizer switched off, you can, for instance, utilize the motion of your vehicle to get otherwise impossible elevation angles, sometimes even squeezing out up to 5 additional degrees. But that's not what most players do, and that's why most players always play with their stabilizers on. Then there's a question from How to Play 1337. Does velocity of an aircraft increase the penetration of projectiles shot in the same direction so that we can achieve bigger penetration rates than shown on the stat cards? Of course, in this scenario, velocities will be combined just as you'd expect. But given that rounds are traveling much faster than even the fastest aircraft in the game, in most cases you won't get a noticeable buff of your penetration rates anyway. Well, that's it for today. That was The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment. Come on everyone, subscribe to the channel, press that bell button, ding-a-ling, and leave a like. And tell us what you think in the comments below. We'll see you in a week.